it also got more and more confusing, because if you are all these people, or if you could be everything or everyone, like, how do you decide who you are? Like, how do you decide for one? Hey y'all and every many, thanks for switching in to Housemates for Life, a podcast powered by plurals for plurals and everybody else who wants to hear more about the insanely world of plurality. Here we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful sides of sharing a body and mind. In the previous episode, our headmate Yuri talked about our earliest plural experiences in our teens, and later how we figured out about our other headmates, some of our headmates, even though we didn't know that we are plural at that time yet. If you haven't yet, check that out before, because in this episode, in this second part of our 2-part Syscovery special episode thingy, we will talk about what made us take this whole multiple other versions more seriously, and what ultimately led us to our Syscovery. A quick word about triggers and content warnings. In this episode, we will talk about topics such as depression, suicidal thoughts, dissociation, depersonalisation, and also mention the pandemic and the lockdown period. We will put timestamps in the episode description so you can skip those parts if you feel like it. We are the voices of just a rather very insane system, aka Jarvis, and I am your host for this episode, but I'm actually just here for the intro and maybe the outro, but I'm so excited to have my headmates running this episode today. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, Housemates for Life, please tell a friend or more and leave a like, subscribe, rate, comment, and everything else you do to show your support and appreciation. Many thanks. Now let's get on with our show. And now I hand over to my headmate Will. Enjoy! Da 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 da! Hi, this is Will recording now. We are recording this a bit out of order, just because I was fronting for the most part this morning, mostly by myself, and actually the others wanted to switch in now to record this episode, but yeah, they are not really anywhere close to the front. Don't know what's going on. I guess the last few days were a bit exhausting, and yeah, I'm here by myself, which I enjoy a lot, but yeah, now I have to record this podcast episode, and I don't want to take away the other's part, so I will just chip in here and record my part, or the one part that I feel like I should talk about it from my perspective. So after realizing how powerful it can be to engage with our other quote-unquote parts, we decided to take this whole thing a bit more seriously, or use it more often or more effectively to aid our collective mental health. I guess that came mostly from Yuri, all that motivation and idea. And then it was 2019, or the turn 2018, 2019, around about that time, during the winter months, we experienced a lot of episodes of depression, and we experienced depression before, but only occasionally and very, I would say, mild, or in the frame of reasonable or acceptable. Not sure if it is ever acceptable, but we never thought much of it, probably also due to a lot of emotional amnesia. So not all of us feel depression, or not all of us feel it in the same way. So if one of us feels depressed or any other emotion, then the others might be completely unfazed by that. And if they switch in, they just brush it off as, oh, I just had a bad day, and then just go about their life. And since we didn't know that we are plural and that we are actually multiple people, that's just how we dealt with it, right? But yeah, in 2019, beginning of 2019, it was intense, more intense than we ever experienced. And it was also the first time that we had seriously suicidal thoughts. Like, I mean, we had them before, but never so intense and so real. We didn't feel like acting upon them, but they were quite intrusive. They were affecting our life and well-being, and we can never be sure 100%. But in hindsight, it feels like that Will had to deal with that depression and the suicidal thoughts, and it felt so foreign to my other headmates. So Yori and Matt were quite active during that time. They were fronting for the most part. You could say they were the hosts or co-hosts at that time. I don't know. We don't like the label host, but that's what it's often called in the plural community. So they were kind of confused by it because they felt quote unquote normal. They felt healthy. They felt happy. They felt partially very euphoric about life. And then suddenly from one day to another, depression, suicidal thoughts, and it just didn't make sense to them at all. Like they were literally confused. They were literally like, I remember Yuri saying one time, really saying to a colleague of ours, being like, "Oh yeah, I feel good, because I know that all the bad feelings inside me, they are not my feelings. So yeah, life is great." So she kind of interpreted it as being overly empathetic and feeling other people's depression or feelings. Like when you listen to the radio and somebody sings a sad song and you feel sad about it. She kind of interpreted it in that way because she couldn't connect with those depressed feelings and those suicidal thoughts. It just didn't fit into her mindset and worldview. It didn't match up. And well, but they still got worried, right? It worries you if you suddenly have to deal with suicidal thoughts and you don't know what's wrong. And so we went to a counselor, mental health well-being counselor. It wasn't psychotherapy, but it was a free service at our workplace. So they went there, and that was so weird because at that time it was Matt and or Yori going to that counselor trying to tell them that they feel depressed and have suicidal thoughts, but clearly they weren't depressed and nowhere near to being suicidal. So that was so awkward. So yeah, we went to that counseling for a couple of sessions, and it was helpful in certain ways. It helped us definitely, but it didn't really help us understanding what is actually going on with us, with ourselves. So what we did then, and again, this was mainly Yori's idea, we started journaling about our experience. And we would use different names for ourselves. So since Yuri had this experience with our other headmates, by talking to them, reaching out to them during meditation, she thought, okay, let's see what this depressed part has to say to us. So we started writing into a journal. No, first we started taking notes, just notes, because that time when this intense depression started for the first time, it was intense. It was confusing for us because we were switching every day, sometimes even every couple of hours, feeling complete opposite sets of feelings. It was confusing, it was frightening. So we took a lot of notes. So I would write some notes about my mental state, how I feel shitty. And then next day, somebody else, usually Yuri, sometimes Matt, would answer to my notes, writing more encouraging notes, kind of telling me that things are gonna be alright, and stuff like that. And then later we would do the same, but in a journal. And so Yuri started signing off her messages with her name, Yuri. That was the first name that we had for our internal soul, whatsoever. But in hindsight, when we read back in that journal, a lot of these messages signed off by Yuri was also mixed in a lot of stuff coming from Matt. You can clearly see the difference in how they express themselves and how, like, they're both very optimistic people, but they're both optimistic in very very different ways. Anyhow, this whole thing with our different parts became more and more vivid. Also, our headspace, or I should say, inner world, we suddenly had this place in our head, like we had this before when we were teenagers. We had this random headspace popping up in our head, but this time we had a different place in our head. Kind of like the central point is, or the entrance point, I should say, it's kind of a campfire close to a cliff, looking across a kind of a Scandinavian fjord. And it's nighttime. It like, you can see stars in the sky, but it's also very bright blue, purplish, orange lights, kind of magical. I don't know. So this place also appeared in our head randomly. Like we didn't come up with it. We didn't decide one day, oh, let's have this inner world. It was just there, and it was like a place that Yuri could access and meet the others, and it was easier to talk to them there. When you visualize something, somehow it's easier to communicate. It's not always possible, but it just flows better. I don't know. But still, all of this, we still viewed it as more like a spiritual experience, like kind of a mindfulness practice, meditation practice, or something like that, to help us healing and coping with this depression. And also, things in our life just settled down a bit, things calmed down a bit. So the depression was there, I guess, for a reason. Like, our life was very chaotic at that time. A lot of things had changed in our life. We had a new job. Our working hours and our working attitude especially changed drastically. Especially me, so my working attitude, I used to be, or I still am a bit, kind of a workaholic. Or, well, thanks to my headmates, we as a collective never were that workaholic. But I, as a single individual, I was basically only focused and worried about work, getting things done, while my headmates enjoyed our collective spare time. So they made sure that we collectively had a lot of fun and joy in our life, but I, as an individual, I feel like, yeah, I didn't get much out of that, unfortunately. And I still struggle to actually enjoy spare time. Like, I feel very restless if I'm not productive, which is a very toxic internalized attitude, which I'm trying to work on. Working again, great. But yeah, at that time, it was. I think it was definitely my decision to say, I don't want to work like that anymore. I want to have clear working hours and clear free time and all of that. And that also gave Matt and Yuri a lot of opportunities to show up at work. Our work changed and they had more opportunities to be themselves in our workspace, not only in our spare time, but also during work time. So a lot of things changed for us during that time. And our whole collective system needed to rearrange, recalibrate itself. So it kind of makes sense that stuff surfaced during that time, and that things like, also because we adjusted our working attitude, I feel like our brain finally had the time to process stuff. So that's why depressing feelings and stuff kind of had a chance to finally surface, because focus was not only on work but also on other things. So yeah, things in our life calmed down a bit. We got used to new adjustments. The depression, I don't want to say it went away, but it became less and less part of our life. And due to the journaling, we could actually see that it was only every couple of months, maybe once a year, that for 2 or 3 days, the quote-unquote depressed part would be there and feel shit, really intensely shit for this short amount of time. But then the rest of the time, it wasn't really a topic in our life. So we felt like, yeah, things are good. Everybody is depressed every now and then, right? And honestly, I'm extremely grateful for that time, for that journaling. Like, I didn't like the journaling part. I still don't like sitting down and engaging with this system stuff and writing stuff, but Yuri always insists on it, which is good. It's necessary. It definitely is helpful. It's like exercising, right? You don't want to go out, do sports, but when you do it, you feel great, and afterwards you really feel like, okay, I've done something really good for my health. That's how it feels engaging with my system. So I was very grateful for them to being so open and curious, and also so creative to just say, hey, let's sit down and write into this journal, write letters to quote unquote ourselves, and being so kind. And I really remember the first time I opened that journal. So the first entry was signed off by Yori, but in hindsight, I think it was mostly Matt writing the first entry. And then me coming in later, months later, feeling depressed and opening that journal. First being like, oh yeah, there was this journal thing. I was supposed to write something when I feel shit. Okay, let's do this. And then opening that journal and reading that first entry with all that, sweet kindness, and recognizing that also, like, I don't know, it's so difficult to explain. I think when you're plural, you understand what I mean, but when you're so you, it's so hard to believe that you, quote unquote, you are also that other person that is so different from you. So reading that entry and realizing there is this other person, I have physical evidence that this other person wrote into this journal that is my journal or our journal. But at that time, I thought, this is my journal, and I wrote this entry with all these kind, funny words. I was like, wow. I can't even, I can't really describe the feeling, but it was a bit eye-opening. We were still far away from Syscovery, but it was one of these moments where I thought, wow, this is actually really me. Like, I'm this person, but I'm also that other person. And I guess this doesn't only apply to plurals. I think when you're singular, try to journal. Try to journal and write to yourself as if you're writing to a friend. I think even if you're not plural, I think that this is nice, could be a really nice experience. I don't know, try it. So yeah, I got lost a bit, I think. But I think I talked about everything I wanted from that time. So things had calmed down in our life. Depression wasn't really such a big part in our life anymore at that time. And then came 2020, the pandemic and the first lockdown periods. And that was an interesting time for everyone and every many, I guess. Yeah, and what do you do when you have some spare time and sitting at home? First of all, we as a system, we also had more the opportunity to be ourselves, being at home and not being involved in social activities so much. First of all, it helped me, Will, to discover that, heck, I'm such an introvert. I never knew that before, because Matt is extremely extroverted and social, and Yuri is also more on the social and emotionally engaged side of things. And I'm like, yeah, fuck this all. I just want to lock myself up in my room and do my thing, and I don't want to deal with people and all that. So I felt like my life wasn't controlled anymore so much by my other headmates, because there weren't many opportunities for them to do their things, do their social activities. So they wouldn't just randomly sign up for things, and me ending up being there and be like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? So that kind of wasn't really a thing anymore. And for 2 or 3 months during the first lockdown, we were actually we were completely isolated. We lived abroad. We weren't with our family. Most of our friends were were at their home country, so we knew a lot of international people. Our flatmate also went home to their family. So for 2 or 3 months, we were really alone. And the only really social interaction, physical social interaction we had was at the grocery store to the cashier saying, hi, thanks, goodbye. That was all we had face to face. We had occasionally online interactions, but that's it. And that sounds sad, but honestly, it was one of the bestest times of my life, I swear. Not so much maybe for my headmates, but for me, it was heaven. You see how excited I get when I talk about social isolation. It's my thing. Yeah, and what do you do when you are by yourself and you got nothing really to do? Well, you start a new hobby. We started writing, and we're still not sure who in our system is actually writing. It feels like it's a collective effort. feels like, first of all, it feels like the stories that we write or come up with, we don't really come up with them. They just happen. They just happen in our head. We might have one or few ideas and intentions, but then it feels like the story just evolves. Like at that time, we had this one story, just one simple premise, which was also based on plural experiences, but maybe we talk about that another time. We had this one simple premise of a story, and from that on, it was just exploding all the ideas. The more we would write, the more characters would enter the scene, and the more story elements, and yeah, it just evolves organically somehow in our head, and it feels like we strongly believe there is one handmaid who is actually the writer or poet inside, because sometimes we feel very poetic, or we feel like we have this ability to express our thoughts in writing very nicely. Somehow in a way we would never talk otherwise, and it feels possessive. It doesn't feel like it's coming from one of us, the main fronters. It feels like there's someone else taking over for that moment, possessing us or something, and being that poetic writer. I don't know. So we call him ghost writer for that reason, because they are not really an active part of our system. They don't like engaging with us actively, but they are there. We can feel the presence sometimes. So it feels like a ghost watching us. A ghost that likes to write, apparently. So ghost writer. Yeah, but I'm kind of going on a tangent here. That writing was a very crucial part of our system discovery, because while writing, we were writing our quote-unquote parts into the characters, and we didn't think any of that, because that's totally a normal thing to do for authors. I think, like, I can't imagine any writer who doesn't do that at least once in their life. Like, you write about your experiences, you write about your thoughts, your feelings. Naturally, you put parts of yourself into your work, into your creative work. And it really wasn't a big deal. It was so natural for us. But we also then got this reflected back to us, right? So similar to the journaling, where I could see physically there's this other version, quote unquote, version of myself writing into this journal. I could also see, or we could see, there are all these different characters in the story, which we all can relate to, but at the same time, they are so contradicting each other. And at first, this also felt natural to us. This felt like this is the human experience. Like, humans are multidimensional, and somehow your mind is infinite. You have everything in your mind. You're not restricted to one perspective or opinion. This is totally normal for a human to be everything, everywhere, all at once. This is a great film, by the way. You should watch it. But yeah, it also got more and more confusing, because if you are all these people, or if you could be everything or everyone, like, how do you decide who you are? Like, how do you decide who you want to be if you want to be everything and you want to, or you could be everything? Like, how do you decide for one? And not that you have to, but we had this very, very often that we were so confused about our opinions and values and decisions and directions in life. Like, it was many, many, many times, and I think this also applies to singlets, but many, many times we were just questioning, what the fuck are we doing with our life? Probably mainly me questioning, what the heck? Why am I on this earth? I don't know. But yeah, and then having that kind of reflected back through our writing, it just got more real in a way. It just somehow our mind manifested somehow outside. We got it mirrored or reflected back to ourselves. We had it basically laid out in front of us, our inner being and identity, whatever. I don't know where this thought is going. And through the writing, I also got my name personally, which I personally, so Will talking, find very awkward. Because it was like we had two novel series going on at the same time, and both main characters were rather cynical, and my other headmates, they would never identify with that. Like, they are so optimistic and enthusiastic about life, and then we write about these characters that have a very pessimistic or very cynical outlook on life, which we collectively would never identify with. But at the same time, it just felt so natural for me personally. And I remember saying to a friend back then, wow, I feel like when I'm writing here, I feel like my alter ego is talking out of me or something like that. And both these characters share the same name origin. Really not sure if that's a coincidence. I don't know. It is a coincidence, but who knows? Maybe our subconscious knew more about us than we. I don't know. But they both share the same origin, William. So back then, still not knowing about plurality stuff, still thinking we are talking here about parts of a human. We're like, oh, probably we have this cynical part inside us. Let's call him Will, because that just fits to the characters. And yeah, ta-da! I'm here, and I find it awkward that I share the same name as these characters, which now in hindsight it feels so self-indulging to write about people sharing your name, but whatever. I try not to think too hard about it because that makes me feel uncomfortable. But yeah, and then things really started rolling as soon as we started questioning our gender. I mean, it's not for the first time that we thought intensely about gender roles, and stuff like that. Like, we had these feelings since a young age. We always had the wish to be born as a boy. And that wish was always on our mind. Like, it wasn't one thing that we had as a child and then forgot about it. It was always there, but it was always this kind of, and I think many transgender people can relate to that, whether singular or plural. You were like, yeah, well, too bad I had not great luck at my birth in the lottery, but whatever, I just make the most out of my life anyway. So you try to live the best life you can in whatever life has given to you. And for some, it can be all right. And for others, it feels more distressing or dysphoric. For us, it was just okay. Like, we had, since not all of us are male, we had enough handmaids or enough occasions where it just felt all right. Not being in a what is usually called a male body, whatever that means. But yeah, at that time, that was 2021, the year. At that time, we actually really questioned our gender more seriously. Like, for a long time, all of us wondered, what does it actually mean to be a girl, a woman, or feminine? Like, none of us actually has really a understanding of that. And I don't want to go into much detail here right now, because I guess the whole gender topic deserves its own episode, but it was just the first time where we really gave a serious thought and where we started to also engage with transgenderism and the non-binary identity. Like, we heard of being non-binary before, but we always thought it's just a political movement to, I don't know, push forward gender equality or something like that. For us, it was always so natural and clear that, yeah, there is no inherent meaning to being male or female, and it's all just social construct, blah, blah. So we never really thought it needs its extra label, or we never thought or understood that cis people exist, so, or binary trans people, so people who really 100% feel like male all the time or feel like a woman all the time. Yeah, we don't have that experience because we switch gender. We have always been like that our whole life, so this is what feels normal to us. So there was never really a need for us to question that. But then, yeah, realizing that this is not how all people feel, or this is actually how only a few people feel, that was like, maybe there's more to this. And so, especially Yuri, so I think Yuri was mainly on that gender questioning discovery journey, because she not just that we all as a system are non-binary or gender fluid because we switch our internal gender all the time, but Yuri herself feels non-binary, feels like she has no real gender. She uses she, her, they pronouns, but she doesn't really feel female. She's okay with female in a biological sense, but since she's also aromantic and asexual, gender doesn't really have any purpose in her life. And she felt good when she found out about it. She found out there is the thing called non-binary or agender, or more than that, she found gender fluid fits to quote-unquote her, because she knew sometimes she feels like male and sometimes like a woman, and so she kind of figured out, oh, I must be gender fluid, not knowing that they're actually these other people. and this whole thing that went so fast. It was like it clicked with her or us, and then we were like, yep, that's cool, we're non-binary, and we want to let everybody know because hey, like we do now with the podcast, we want people to hear about minority groups and make them more visible and more integrated into society, whatever. So she was like, yay, I'm non-binary and I'm gonna use my name Yuri from now on, and this and that, and then what happened then? It was I was like, at some point, someday, I was fronting all by myself, and I was like, I'm not non-binary. I don't like being seen as female, like, at all. I feel very dysphoric about it. I always wanted to be born as a boy. I'm clearly a man. I don't know what womanhood is. Like, our life was more a guy's life, whatever that means, but we have no connection with the womanhood, femininity, whatever. I don't know. I couldn't even if I wanted to, I just can't. So for me, it was so clear that I'm male and not non-binary, and I also didn't want to use Yori's name because that was not my name. It didn't fit to me. My name is Will, and I wanted to be called that, and it confused me so hard because there was also this other dude in my head, or like I was thinking was sometimes I'm this guy, and sometimes I'm also a guy, but a different guy, kind of guy, and that guy wants to be called Matthias, or Matthias is German name. He wants to be called Matt. And it just confused me so hard, or us. And so we had these 3 different identities that were kind of existing in parallel to each other, with each other, overlapping, and that was so confusing, I swear. And this all happened so fast. It happened in just a few weeks. We were going through that kind of time. I remember so vividly one night we were lying in bed trying to sleep and thinking about our identity, like who do I want to be? Who do we want to be? Do I want to be Yuri? Do I want to be Matt? Do I want to be Will? Like, we couldn't really point our finger who we are and what we want to make out of our life. And it was so confusing. It was the first time that we really felt consciously some form of dissociation or depersonalisation, even though we didn't know at that time yet what it is, but it felt so intense for the first time. It felt like all our identities are just overlapping somehow. I mean, this happens all the time now, and we consciously experience that, and it's okay. But at that time, for the first time, we actually consciously observed that in that intensity, and then suddenly our identities were just vanishing somehow in space, kind of just evaporating, like whatever there is, identity, if you can actually physically grab it, I don't know, but it really felt like it was just evaporating away into space. And whatever was left, I don't know, but felt like falling into a deep void of nothingness. I don't know. This sounds so trippy, but yeah, we didn't take any substances, nothing. It was just us trying to sleep. And then panic kicked in, because it felt like this is it. Our identity is gone, and like, what do I do now? Like, how do I move on like this? Like being nothing. And also our thoughts went to the time when we had these depressive episodes and the journaling, and it was like, if all these comforting voices are gone, like what do I do if I feel depressed again? Like, who's going to help me? It was really a frightening episode of depersonalization. And then we listened to a song that we would listen to from time to time, because it was exactly about that, like having no identity or not being sure about your identity. And so we would listen to that song to just calm ourselves, to be like, this is normal, everybody experiences this from time to time, all humans are multidimensional, no human is solid in their identity, and there's this song about it and a lot of people relate to it, so this must be quote unquote normal. But then we read a comment on that song which said, oh, this is such a great song about dissociative identity disorder, good job. And we're like, hang on, what does that mean? What is that? I mean, we heard about multiple personality disorder before, which is now called dissociative identity disorder. And I think we digged into it before, parallel to many other things. But we always got turned off by the amnesia bit. As we told you in the previous episode on memory, we actually have quite good memory. We think we do. No, but generally our day-to-day memory is very good. So amnesia was always off the table for us. So, but then we learned that doesn't have to be that way. Like you can be multiple without amnesia. And that just blew our mind. And we read up on plurality, we saw videos on plurality, people with lived experiences talking about it, not just some scientific articles or entries on Wikipedia. No, it was actual people explaining how they feel, how plurality feels for them, and a few of them we could totally 100% relate to them. Well, not 100%, but I felt like, oh my gosh, they're describing exactly what we did right now, exactly our discovery journey. It was almost parallel to how we struggled and what we went through, and also the upsides. And we were like, this is it. Like, we were so convinced in first moment. We never felt so understood and so seen by the internet when we learned about plurality. And yeah, so we were very euphoric in the first hours, days, weeks. But I will end this here because that would be the starting point for the next episode, where we talk about the months after Syscovery, because that's a wild roller coaster. I think every blue can relate to that. So, but that's coming in the next episode. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. This is Matt again doing the outro, my second favorite part right after the intro. So in this episode we told you a bit about we talked a lot about our Syscovery journey, our earliest plural experiences, how we met our first handmaids that we recognized, and all the spiraling happenings in our life that eventually led us to discover our system and plurality. And if you feel like it, you can share your discovery story in the comments, or make your own creative content, write a blog entry, link it in a comment. We are very happy to hear about your stories. This episode was brought to you by the Voices of Jarvis, with Matt as your host, really just a host here, and with my headmates as the main speakers today, Yori and Will. Thank you, all beautiful souls out there, for listening to our podcast and all your support and kind words. We really appreciate it. It really keeps us motivated and keep going with this podcast, seeing that it actually has the desired effect that we intended when we started this project. If you enjoyed this episode and think it brought a little bit of value to your life, please tell a friend or more. And leave a like and subscribe, write comment, because it will help other people find this episode. Many thanks for your support. And as I always like to say, let your personality shine brighter than your eyes, and your confidence shout louder than your voice. Until next time with Housemates for Life. And in the end, a few more outtakes for your chuckle muscle. Enjoy! Okay, this is Yuri. I will just talk a bit first to get better into my mindset. Okay, Matt is back. Matt is trying to get back into this body after when Yuri's parts were recorded. I try to be more myself, so I'm just singing here because that's what I do. Yeah, I sing a lot in Headspace, and annoy my headmates, in particular Will. But yeah, what can you do, right? I'm a handmaid. I gotta do what handmaids do. In this episode, we will touch on, not just touch, we will actually talk about it. We'll talk about This is too funny, sorry. But we will cover that in the next episode. We decided to... Wait, stop.